if the relationship is not there, the resolution will never be found.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Today I have another very special guest with me, Eugene Gershman with GIS. Is it companies? Yes, sorry. GIS Companies is on the show today. Eugene, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brad. Pleasure being here.
Awesome. So we got some exciting things to talk about in terms of dealing with kind of development and GCs and those relationships. But before we get into all of that, tell us just a little bit about yourself, your business, kind of what you do.
Absolutely. So I'm a real estate developer, primarily focusing on multifamily, single-family residential projects. And my unique niche is we partner with property owners to help them develop their sites. So unlike many developers, we don't buy land ourselves. We join with somebody who already owns the land, and we help them navigate the world of development. We put together the teams, the design, engineering, architecture teams. We bring in all sorts of consultants, from geotech to lawyers to investment bankers. We help fundraise for the project. We manage construction, and then we manage the exit, whatever that may be. If it's a for sale, we manage the sales process, bring in the realtors. If it's a for rent, then we put together a property management team and oversee the lease up, refinance, and all those things. So full scope development that we do for owners who already have the land. We structure it as a true joint venture, so we do share the risks and the upsides. We take the ownership position by essentially reinvesting our profits as equity into the deal, and that's how we get things done. I've owned the construction company for many years. It's been an interesting ride with lots of ups and downs, so definitely have a lot in common with traditional builder developers, general contractors, things like that.
Awesome. Well, I think we have a great conversation. I do want to dive into the land, what you just mentioned here. So let's say I'm a doctor, I own 20 acres somewhere and I want to develop it. I could just call you and you guys basically handle everything from that point on.
Pretty much, yeah. We can take care of the process from the beginning to the end. We can identify what is the highest and best use of that land. We study the code. We meet with the municipality, if it's city, county, whatever the jurisdiction is, to navigate the hurdles and the codes there. And we put together the team. But absolutely.
What areas do you work in? I mean, you all over the U.S., all over the world? Like, what's your area of operations?
Yeah, I love that question. For the last 25 years, 20 plus years, we've been primarily in Western Washington, around the Seattle area. Recently, about a year or so ago, we started broadcasting our message that we are that unique developer who partners with owners. And the phone started ringing from all over the country. We recently started a project in Idaho. We have submitted a proposal for a deal in Texas. We're looking at deals in Tennessee, in Florida, in California, in Oregon, pretty much all over the country. So, yes, traditionally I'm based in the Seattle area, but we are capable of doing deals anywhere in the country. We decided to shut down our construction company, which really disconnected us from the locale. We no longer have to work on a project where we live, because we could go anywhere else. And we actually prefer working with local consultants, local contractors who know the area, who know the people, and that way we could be most successful.
Okay. So if someone's listening, do you take the general contractor position, or do you just consult and you would hire a general contractor in that area as the lead on that construction? How do you typically do that?
So we become a joint venture partner. So the way we would do it is we would set up a standalone special purpose LLC, where we are one of the members, one of the partners in the joint venture. With the original owner, in most cases, we need to fundraise and bring in additional limited partners into that LLC. Our company is a manager of that LLC. We're the manager of the project. And then this LLC is now the owner of the property. And so the owner would contract with the general contractor. We would be the manager of the owner entity. So we would do construction management We would oversee the construction. We would review all the draw requests. We would review all of the contracts and sign them, change orders, everything that an owner would do. But we're not a GC ourselves.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. So if a GC is listening to this and they specialize in light commercial, apartments, multifamily, all of that, would that be something that like they could reach out to you to get on a list? Obviously, they have to have a department, you have to have something going on in their city. But I'm just curious if there's an opportunity there for connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We love contractors. We work with contractors a lot. Every time we go to a new area, we have to build relationship with the general contractor because they're the ones who are actually going to be building the project. So yes, absolutely. Feel free to reach out, get on our list. Would love to be in touch. And also a lot of times owners call contractors about possibly building something. And I've been in those shoes before. An owner calls in, asks for a bid. They don't have any plans. They don't have any permits. They don't have anything, but they want to know how much it's going to be. And not just how much it's going to be to build, but they want to see a bid. Most contractors would laugh at that because nothing's designed.
Right.
Please call me and tell me that you're working with an owner like that. I would love to get in touch with them, and I would love to be the professional representative there to actually bridge that gap and explain to the owner what needs to be done, build the project properly, and involve the contractor early on so that we could do proper pre-construction services, estimates, and design the most efficient building.
Yeah, I thought you just get 3 estimates and pick the lowest one, and that's how you go about the whole process, Eugene.
Yeah, pretty much. Right into bankruptcy.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about a little bit about just kind of, you had your construction company, you've dealt with a lot of GCs, even with the land development, you've dealt with subcontractors. What are some things that you could share with us that would help us to really help with relationships between those different types of companies?
I see the work of contractors as true collaborators on a job. I personally have made that mistake in the past working with the subs when I had my own construction firm, where we would go out and, like I said, get multiple bids, pick the lowest bidder. And every time we would do that, it would bite us in the butt. I prefer working relationships from the very beginning. The way I vet my teams is I see what their capacity is in terms of human capital, if they can physically do the work. I check what they have done in the past and have they built similar size and scale projects before. And I ask them to estimate their general condition, general requirements. That's really all I need to know. I don't need a bid from them to deliver the product because, especially when we're early on, we don't know what it's going to be. It hasn't been designed, it hasn't been engineered. There's so many variables. I would love to get their perspective on what a similar project cost them in the past. That would be super helpful. And I would love to have their contractor's fee spelled out. That's really the only thing that you can negotiate with contractors is the fee. Are you happy with what they're proposing or not? Compare it to others. If somebody's offering a lower fee, understand why it's lower. But just because somebody says that they can do it for $20 a foot versus $30 a foot versus $300 a foot means absolutely nothing, because it all boils down to what it is actually we're bidding on. What I like to do is I like looking at very detailed scope of work. I like to make sure that my plans are very well detailed and my specifications are very well detailed. That's the most common thing that's missing, is that you see a bunch of lines on paper and you don't know what material actually goes in there. And that's where we see most mistakes. And I'm teaching all of the owners that I'm working with is, I don't care how much your contractor says they're going to charge you for it, because you might be talking about 2 different things. They're assuming that they're building A and you're assuming that they're building B. And unless you drill down to the very fine details of what it is actually included in the price, it means nothing. And so that, I think that's the biggest advice that I could give is when you're hiring a contractor, make sure you like the people. That's my thing. When I go out to hire GCs, I literally tell the guys, look, I want to know that I could go out for drinks with you after work and talk about sports, families, politics, and go back to work the day after. if you don't have that relationship with people, if you don't trust them, don't work with them.
I like that. That's good. There's always, I don't know where I read it one time in a book or somewhere, but some executive at a company would always take his interviewees to dinner or lunch, and before he would get there early, he would tell the servers, like, hey, mess up their order on purpose. Like, whatever they order, give them something different. Because he wanted to see how they would react, right? And like, it was just like the perfect litmus test of, you get to see someone's true colors whenever they're put in a situation like that. And that's kind of what I hear you saying with like being able to go out and have drinks afterwards and have that kind of, casual relationships outside of work. So I like that the idea of, having those types of relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. Things always go wrong, and you have to be prepared to discuss it and address it and figure out a solution. It's just the way this industry is. Yeah.
I was having a conversation earlier with some of my clients, and I was like, one of my clients had a problem with a cabinet that the manufacturer installed a cabinet that had an issue, and like they were kind of him-hawing around fixing it, and they had to call the manufacturer and all this stuff. And he was like, whenever I asked them to fix something, they did a change order, and I just want to send them a change order for all my time that I'm, wasted. And I was like, come on now, like, are you doing it because you're like emotionally charged, or is this like a relationship? And so that was the conversation we had. It was like, let's take the emotion out of that decision and try to figure out what's going on, because there may be something on their end that we're not aware of. Right. There may be a situation that we don't know. So let's try to first seek to understand and then try to work together. And again, having those healthy relationships, because for him, the other option was just go find a whole new, cabinet supplier and start that whole relationships over one tiny little thing that maybe just could be worked out with a lunch meeting. And so I hear what you're saying is like how important that is.
Of course. And we had lots of problems on the construction site. Usually it stems from something being unknown and new information coming together, and then change orders happen. And then that's when the finger pointing begins, is who screwed up? Why is this a change? Why is this costing me extra? Understandably, contractor wants to cover their expense. Understandably, owner doesn't want to pay for it because they assume that it should have been known. And many times it comes from the whole notion that either the plans weren't developed very well, and when you agreed on a deal, you didn't know what exactly you're agreeing on, or a change happened and a decision needed to be made quickly in real time. And even though your contract does say that they have to get a written change order signed before they bill you, in many cases, they get the fix, get it going. And yes, bottom line is the owner is responsible for it because there was not a known fact, not a known issue. And I've been through litigation before. I've been through so many arguments before, through mediation before. It comes down to, if you got the value, you need to pay for the value. But it usually gets to litigation when the relationship is not there. Most issues, most conflicts could be resolved at the table or on the construction site the day when that issue happens. If you think that you could just close your eyes, hide your head in the sand, and avoid it and kick the can down the road, it's always going to bite you in the end and going to cost you more. So that's why that relationship, if the relationship is not there, the resolution will never be found. And conflicts will always happen. It's construction site. It's a bunch of guys who are overworked and angry. And I'm sorry, it's just the truth of life.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. It sounds like communication is probably the number one thing that causes conflict when there's not proper communication of some kind. Right. Whether written, verbal, it's not documented, or it's not, somewhere someone dropped the ball, information wasn't passed on, and it was missed. And those relationships are healthy. When you have a healthy relationship, you can talk through that and really come to a resolution, usually that everyone can agree with. I think the relationship is very important. And I used to work for a developer, a local developer, and he basically would self-build. So everything he was building, he would build for himself. It's like we would build a strip mall and then he would lease it up. And some of them he would sell, he'd get them like 70% lease and then sell them. So he was he had a civil engineering background, I was the construction manager. And so I dealt with a lot of the, let's get 3 estimates and then pick the lowest price. And after a while, I was like, we can't keep doing that on every project, because eventually we're going to run out of subs. After they've given you 3 or 4 bids and never got the job, they're not going to give you another bid. And so I was always pushing for those relationships, and he was always pushing for the bottom dollar. And it was difficult being the middleman, in that kind of relationship. And so the communication and the relationship is definitely a vital part of that.
Absolutely. Well, and in that example, what I like doing is I like having a group of subs, because a lot of times the same electrician that you love is not available on the next job. So I always wanted to have at least 2 or 3 that I could send the bids out, and they would know that they're on a short list of 2 or 3 subs, and I will rotate it. Just because I need to keep relationship with multiple companies, I need to be sure that next time I have the job, if you're unavailable, I'm going to go to the other guy. And yeah, there's been cases when I get multiple bids and one is an outlier. And if that's my preferred vendor, I'd sit down with them and say, look, you're an outlier. What's happening here? And we'll level the bids, right? You have to know what's included. Is it the fact that they are so busy that they're throwing in 30% markup on things? Possibly. That happened before too, and happy for them. But if this other guy is willing to do the same work for less, then they would get the job. But it doesn't mean that it would be a way for us to verify the bid, and our subs would know that they're being compared to others. But nonetheless, it's still a short list, and they would know that they would get the next job.
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Did you ever have like a preferred vendor though, that, he would get 80% of the work, and then you had the other 2 or 3 that would get, the rest of the 20%, or did you try to rotate it all the time?
I mean, it was more of an art than science, I'd say. I think the short answer is yes, we did have preferred vendors for some of the trades, like excavation. Like we had an electrician who's actually a friend that we would typically go to. We had a mechanical sub that we would typically go to, but they always knew that they're being checked, and that we have another sub bidding this. And in some cases, yes, we did have to go with somebody else, because like you said, if you ask the same guy to bid multiple times and never get the job, then they'll stop giving you the price. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort to estimate the job, and the more complicated the project is, the more time it takes. So yes, I can totally respect the fact that if you bid with the same contract, the same owner multiple times, and they didn't choose you, then what's the chance that you're going to get chosen next?
Right. What's some advice you have for a general contractor who's looking to hire subs? How do you vet them? Like, what's your preferred method of vetting them to make sure they're actually going to do a good job?
First thing I ask is what other projects they've done before that are similar to mine. That is probably the most important thing. I need to be sure that they've built similar size and style projects as the one I'm working on, and for how long. Then I would typically, if it's a commercial job, it's easy to find who the developer was. I would typically call the developer and talk to them and ask them how the relationship went. What were the problems? What were the good things? And see what feedback I get. If it's a smaller residential job, you might have to ask for references. Personally, I don't like references too much. One of my employee candidates once said, after we finished the interview, we asked him for references, and as he's leaving the conference room, he's like, "Oh yeah, no problem. I'll find 3 people to lie for me." And so that line stuck with me about the quality of references you typically get. But so I try to do independent research. With residential jobs, you could search online. There's probably going to be a bunch of online reviews, and scan the bad ones, see if you can find out more information. That could be helpful. But most importantly is how long they've been doing this, how many projects they've built. Like that. That's the main thing that I look at. And then I typically ask them for their estimate of GRGCs, general requirements, general conditions, and their contractor's fee proposal. So I don't even care what their line-by-line estimate is, because I will drill down to those numbers. I will look at their subcontractor bids once we're ready, once we're beyond that selection, because I want that contractor to be by my side from day one. From the day architect's pencil touches the paper, I want that contractor to be there with me to help me estimate.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And before the project is designed, it makes no sense for them to bid. I'm curious about their previous costs on similar projects that we could use for our budgeting purposes, but that's not going to be my criteria for choosing them. My criteria is going to be their fee proposal, their GR estimate, and I just want to see how they build it. I want to see how much fluff they put in there, how much general overhead they try to attribute to general conditions, and what their proposed fee is or markup on things.
Gotcha. Okay.
Hey, just a quick time out from the show. If you're a frustrated contractor who's dealing with low profit margins, stuck working on the tools every day, or doing free estimates for people who are never going to hire you in the first place, I invite you to my private contractor community, the Profit Club, where contractors just like you are adding 2 to 3 times more profit each year without producing any more jobs and finally getting completely off the tools to never do another free estimate again. So if you're ready to increase your profits, stop doing free estimates and get off the tools, then all you have to do is click the link in the show notes to learn more about the Profit Club and see how it can easily 2 to 3 times the cash in your pocket, give you a proven sales process that will convert more jobs with ease and get you off the tools once and for all. And the best part is you can do all of this without having to produce more jobs than you currently are. Click the link to learn more. Now let's get back to the show.
I like the fact that you asked about, have you ever done projects like this before? Because we all know there's people that are trying to level up, and they like to kind of be overly confident of their abilities, although they've never done it before. And that usually ends up not turning out very well.
It's risky. I mean, I have seen, hell, I've done it myself when I would take on a job bigger and more complicated than anything I've done before. And the way I would explain it to investors, to lenders is, yes, maybe my company as a company hasn't done this before, but look at the people that I brought to the table. My project manager, superintendent, project engineers all had experience building something that we're trying to build. And that was my excuse. So I kind of look at it through that lens a little bit. By giving them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. And I guess it depends on the market cycle. Right now, when I know contractors have a lot of capacity and availability, I would like to choose the one who has done this type of project before many times. A few years ago, when it was really hard to find contractors, it was very difficult to find subs, pre-COVID, then post-COVID, when we had that boom, it was really hard to find people, it was really hard to find subs, and you kind of have to settle for what you can get. I could maybe deviate from my rule. Today, I'm choosing a contractor for a new project, and I'm doing exactly that. I want to make sure that I'm comfortable with those guys. I want to make sure that the meetings that we have are not awkward, that they're not forced, that we can have a casual conversation over beer and be relaxed about it and have good understanding of our sort of general principles on life, general ways that we solve problems. I think those things are more important than anything else.
Yeah, you were talking about like COVID and stuff. I had a friend of mine he's a commercial realtor for a developer, and they were developing a new piece of property and they were going to put apartment complexes on there. Well, at the same time, there were like 2 other apartment complexes going on in the city, and the brick mason, like there was only like one qualified brick mason to do that type of commercial work. And they were going to have to hire someone out of, 3 hours away to come in because the other guy was tied up. And it was going to add like a, 10 to 15% cost on the project just because of the brick mason. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't do the project. And so like just last year, they actually finally started building that because of that. But it makes sense, when you can't just add 10 to 15% to your cost, because that could pretty much ruin most of your profits on that.
Exactly. Or find another solution. That's why I like having contractors at the table early on. Architects are notorious for trying to design crap that would never work, because they're all, not all, but many of them try to build a monument for themselves and try to win an award in a magazine. But bottom line is we need to make sure that the project not only looks good, but is also making us money, right? And so having a contractor at the table is super useful because contractor can say, look, there's no brick masons available. But if we could substitute this with, I don't know, a panel of some sort or a different siding, it might have a similar look, but we can get it done faster and for less money, and then bring it to the table. But that's the type of the conversation. Those are the type of relationships that I love having.
Yeah. It's important. It absolutely is important. Well, let's do a little hard shift here. I want to talk about building like a recession-proof business. I know you've had experience with this, so share us a little bit of information, share us some ideas about how we can build a strong business that's going to be recession-proof.
I think the most important part about building a business in general, I mean, I know a lot about real estate business, and of course, real estate is very recession sensitive in most cases. But I think the main thing about most businesses in general is leverage and ability to drive the business and drive the revenue stream while the economy takes its cycles. In real estate, leverage is quite simple, the debt that you take on. If you're very highly leveraged and your equity percentage is small and your debt percentage is very high, you are very much dependent on those cycles, economic cycles. What happened in the last few years when interest rates started rising, after a long period of growth, lenders got complacent, borrowers got complacent, and so we were taking out huge loans. Our loan to cost ratios were extremely high, sometimes in the 90%, sometimes 95%. I've even seen deals at 100% loan to cost. Like literally a lender would finance 100% of the cost of your project. Well, what happens when the interest rates started going up? You finish a project that you took out this huge loan for, interest rates went up, you need to refinance, your proceeds aren't high enough to cover your construction debt. And that's when businesses collapse. That's when projects collapse. When you talk about general business cycles and protecting yourself from recession, the biggest lesson that I've learned and the rule that I started following in the recent years is to not undervalue the importance of marketing and sales. What I've been focused on for many years of my career, because I grew up in a construction family. My father was a contractor. That's how I got to real estate development. I joined the family business and we started developing projects of our own. But we always grew organically. My dad knew how to build, and he would pass the knowledge of construction. What does it take to get things done? What does it take to actually put the product together? And that's been my focus. Even though I studied business and economics, my focus was on how do we build the widgets? And not until recently, even though in business school, yes, you take marketing classes, it kind of, it's pushed down to you. But as a kid, learning that stuff, you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then you get to real life and we never had to market. But that's how the businesses grow. And I think that's the most important part. You can't forecast what's going to happen. I mean, maybe to a certain degree. There's some very experienced economists that I follow, that I trust, and I try to adjust my way of thinking based on what their forecasts are. But the bottom line is you have to make sure that your business is generating revenue. And that's the most important rule.
So when you say like sales and marketing, what do you mean by that? I mean, is it just you have to do more marketing and get better at sales whenever it's kind of slowing down, or like, can you expand on that a little bit?
You have to make sure that you are marketing your business when the times are good, so that you could build a habit of generating revenue, of generating leads. How do you acquire new sales? How do you acquire new customers? How do you grow your business base? That is a very key component. A lot of times it could be half of your overall company budget is that new business generation, whether it's lead generation, whether it's social media marketing, whether it's podcasting or traditional advertising. Whatever the business model is, you have to hone that skill when the times are good, because when the times become bad, usually what happens is when businesses are trying to cut down costs, they terminate their marketing budgets, or they cut down on their marketing budgets. And that's the opposite of what they need to do.
Yeah.
That is what they need to focus on, that when times get tough, when the economy slows down, when interest rates go up, when, I don't know, tariffs kick in, or whatever the cause of the next slowdown is in your niche, you have to be prepared with a well-developed system for acquiring new business.
I've had a lot of conversations about the marketing and stuff, and it's you touched on it. It's like, if let's say you're spending, $5,000 a month now on ads, and it's getting you enough leads to where you can fill your pipeline. When the economy slows down, you may have to double or triple that ad spend or marketing just to maintain the level of leads that you were getting before. And a lot of people don't realize this because, like you said, hey, we're not making as much money. We're not selling as many jobs. It's slowing down. I need to conserve. So let's cut out the marketing. And they're basically shooting themselves in the foot. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. That's exactly what happened. I mean, we made that mistake. We never really had a well-developed marketing system. We have tried things here, we have tried things there, but we never really had a very good system. When things got tough, we focused on delivering the projects that were in the pipeline. We were focused on trying to find financing, trying to find ways to get those projects, out of the water. And that 2 or 3 year period of time almost killed the company because we had no future revenue. And so when the projects got done, we had nothing. We had no future pipeline. And it was tough. We lost all the people. We barely had to lay off anybody. Employees saw that there's no future pipeline, and they quickly drifted off and found themselves new jobs and moved on. And so, yeah, absolutely. That's if you have the formula of how much you need to spend in order to generate new business, and you have your ratios of, if you spend, like you said, 5,000 and that gives you, 7 sales or whatever it is, then yeah, you have to maybe put some money aside for the slow times so that you could then increase your marketing budget. And every business is different, right? That's what we were struggling with. We didn't know how to market, how to acquire new business for our company. And that's when the times became difficult, when economy slowed down, that's when we got hurt.
Besides sales and marketing, are there any other suggestions or tips on like how to help with, a slowdown or a recession? I mean, how to help with that? I mean, one thing that I've seen before, an executive talking about, and I forget what company he worked for, but he said that they had they always kept a year's worth of operating capital and reserves. And during the 2008 9 housing market crash, like they didn't make a single penny for the entire year, but they were able to work out of their operating reserves. Do you have any other tips like that?
Yeah, I mean, I smile when I hear tips like that. Yeah, large companies that have been around for a long time that have big cash reserves, it'd be nice to have.
Sure.
Many smaller businesses would be like, well, great, I don't have that.
Right.
I mean, your typical sort of business school solution is to have at least 2 or 3 months of reserves. You have to calculate your current ratio. There's multiple ratios CFOs like tracking to make sure that the business is stable. I frankly don't remember them all. But yes, all that is important. If you can do something like that, that's obviously going to help. If you can have some cash reserves set aside, that could help you ride out the recession. That's great. But then you also have to realize that the slowdown you might experience is not temporary. I mean, if you're involved in, I don't know, I can't think of a good example, but if you are selling a product that gets replaced with something else, take AI, for example. You're selling a product or a service, and all of a sudden AI comes along and you think that you're experiencing temporary slowdown, but what you're experiencing is slow death. Right. Because your the product is being phased out. So you have to be able to recognize and pivot if you have to, because the slowdown might be not just a sign of a global event. It just might be a sign of your business being replaced with something else. But leverage is another thing I mentioned before, or debt. That's one thing you have to be very careful about is when you're operating a business, make sure that the loans, the operating lines of credit, or any other kinds of debt that you have, make sure that they don't kill you. Because if your revenue slows down, but you still have to pay off the loan that you took, how are you going to handle that? How much can you afford to lose? How much business can you afford to lose? Or how much revenue can you afford to lose before your lenders start knocking on your door? So that's an important thing. You can always lay off people, but if you owe money to the bank, there may not be another solution.
Yeah, I've talked about this before. You see that happen a lot with new contractors. They start their business, they have a little bit of success early on, and so then they want to go out and buy all the equipment. They want to buy new trucks or whatever it might be, and they get super debt heavy, and then all of a sudden, phone stops ringing, recession, economic event, whatever, and their overhead is so high that they can't afford to not make money on a regular. So now they're like, they have to stay busy just to pay their bills. And you're just setting yourself up for a huge failure, in my opinion. I think that's what you were saying, basically.
Exactly. Basically, I mean, trucks, equipment, contractors love leasing their equipment and leasing their brand new trucks because, the new superintendent comes in and they wouldn't take the job unless they got a brand new truck. And so you go out and you lease a brand new truck and you're like, I don't care. I'll just pass it through to the client.
Yep.
With my general conditions. Great. You can do that. But what happens when the job ends? Or what if the job stops midway? What if your client faces challenges and cannot proceed? Now you got this truck that you have to keep paying for, and you can't sell it because it's a lease, and you're stuck with it. What do you do? And if there's no new job that you could reassign it to, it drains your wallet.
Yeah. I see it all the time. If I go to like a big box store and I see a brand new contractor driving a big old brand new truck, jacked up wheels and all that, and I say, oh, look, you'll be out of business in 6 months.
Right. I mean, unfortunately, but you do need to have tools that work. Mm-hmm. And if you're driving an old beat up truck and it fails on you when you need to show up, that's going to cost you a lot more.
Sure.
But there's a happy medium. There's a fine balance. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't have to go buy a brand new vehicle. You can buy a gently used one that's going to get you 10 years of use or whatever. So it sounds like we're on the same track there. I mean, really just being financially responsible with our money. Don't overextend yourself. Make sure you've developed good relationships within your community and other key players and strategic partners. And, pay attention to economy and economic events. Is there something that you like, I know you said you have different economists and stuff you follow, but like, is there, for a layman doesn't really understand a lot of, like, what would you recommend to keep an eye on to kind of forecast some of these things that are happening? I mean, do you look at like GDP, or what is it that you would recommend?
Yeah, I typically look at inflation. I typically look at GDP. I look at just basic stock market. If you want to listen to something that's more understandable for a layman, look up ITR Economics. They have a free blog. They have a free podcast. Their podcast episodes, I think they're once a week or twice a week, and they're like 5 to 7 minutes long. Apolitical, they're just tracking the data and they're doing forecasts. It's probably the easiest one to digest and understand. But yeah, interest rates, yesterday, obviously, we saw that interest rates stayed the same, which is an interesting economic indicator. Always watch the Fed decisions, and it's important to see what's happening with fiscal policy. People get excited or mad when whatever party of choice for them does something. But what I look at is, regardless of your politics, whenever a change happens, how does that affect the economy?
Yeah.
If it's going to increase government debt, then you have to figure that there's going to be more cash circulating in the economy that could stimulate growth on the one hand, but that could also increase inflation on the other hand. So you have to balance the two. And again, regardless of whether you think they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, what you need to make a decision for yourself is how's that going to impact your business.
Yeah. So you would recommend to not maybe become an expert at it, but definitely pay attention to what's going on with the economy and stuff so that you can forecast some of these slowdowns.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, you can't, nobody has a crystal ball. Right now, a lot of contractors are trying to figure out what to do with the tariffs.
Right.
And are they going to impact them? Look, you don't know. Nobody knows. You wake up in the morning and there's a new news about some trade negotiation, and that's going to change things. You can't rely on that. You have to work with the information you have. You have to make certain assumptions. You have to factor in some contingencies and live with that.
Somebody posted on my Facebook. One of my Facebook acquaintances posted a thing, and it was like something about the tariffs and how prices have gone up like 150% on certain items or whatever. And not that that's not happening, but the other thing to consider is like some of these things are temporary. Like some of these things may only last 2 weeks, or they may only last, a month. Other things may last years, but like you have to be able to like remove some of the emotion, like some of the knee-jerk reaction out of some of these things, and just kind of take a step back and observe, for a short period of time. Because I think we can make some rash decisions based on those, highly emotional decisions, and it can, hurt us in the negative because we're jumping ship basically before the ship's even on fire.
Exactly. Well, before we know what's the actual impact going to be. When they first started talking about these massive tariffs, a lot of people freaked out.
Yeah.
But then you kind of have to slow down and see how it plays out. Well, it's becoming apparent that the tariff talk is an excuse to get other countries to the table and to discuss the trade relationships.
Right.
Okay. So now that we know that, it doesn't mean that there are going to be no tariffs. But the impact of those tariffs isn't as dramatic as some people feared in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we're getting short on time here. I always like to ask a couple questions. One is, what's a question that I didn't ask you, Eugene, that you feel like is something we should have talked about?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I like talking about real estate and what to do with undeveloped land. Because I get that question all the time. I get people call me, especially brokers, real estate brokers call me all the time. Sometimes owners call me and say, I've got this great piece of land. You should totally buy it. And it's going to be a great development opportunity. And my comeback to them is, if your land is so great and you have such a great development opportunity, why are you selling it? What are you going to do with the money after you sell the property? And in many cases, they say, I don't know, I'll probably reinvest it, probably buy some other piece of real estate. And then I say, well, if you're going to invest in real estate regardless, why not double down and reinvest into your property? So my motto has been for the last several years, do not sell your land, develop it. Because there's so many opportunities. And to contractors out there, when you see opportunities, first of all, figure out for yourself, are you a contractor or are you a developer? And it's fine to be both, but in many cases, contractors take on the role that is not native to them. And I like to say, look, bring somebody who is, I don't say hire me necessarily or bring me in the deal, but bring in a third party that could bridge the gap between your inexperienced owner and your construction expertise to be maybe even just the owner's rep. Somebody who is experienced as construction manager who can guide the less experienced owner through the process, because honestly, it is a pain in the butt to deal with an owner who doesn't know what they're doing and who doesn't know what questions to ask. And unless your goal is to take advantage of them and take as much money from them as possible, which I would never recommend.
Right.
But yeah, that's probably my last thought. Is my motto of don't sell the land, develop it.
Yeah, before booking this interview and learning more about what you do, I really never knew of a company or organization that would do what you do, partnering with the landowner and basically helping them develop that. So it's an interesting concept. I'm fascinated by it. I always like to ask one more question too, everyone. That is, what's a book that you're currently reading, or one that you would recommend?
The one that I would recommend, I really like Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. Great book on negotiations.
Yep. I've
reread it 3 times now. I also like Daniel Priestley's Oversubscribed and Key Person of Interest. When we talked about marketing and what it takes to build a business, he really breaks it down into the different stages and what it takes to promote and to build a business. So those would probably be the ones that I'd recommend.
Who's the author of the Oversubscribed one?
Daniel Priestley.
All right. I haven't heard of that one, so I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Eugene, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, it's been a fun conversation. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Well, guys, that's the end of the show. You know where to find me on the socials. You can just search for the Hammer and Grind podcast. Also, I forgot to ask, but Eugene, if somebody is interested in contacting you or learning more about your business and your services, where could they do that?
On social media, pretty much everywhere. I'm mostly using LinkedIn a lot. I have a lot of followers there, and a lot of people contact me. So just look me up, Eugene Gershman on LinkedIn. Otherwise, my website, GIScompanies in plural, .co. No M there. GIScompanies.co.
Okay, and we'll put links to that in the show notes, so that way you guys don't have to go searching for it. But again, thanks for being on the show, and you know where to find me, Hammer and Grind Podcast, or go to the show notes. And remember, guys, until next time, profit is not a dirty word.